Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you may be and whatever you may be doing. I am Tom Colahue, and welcome to the Tom Colahue YouTube channel, where today we are going to be previewing tonight's WWE SmackDown. That is the SmackDown of the 18th of September in good old 2020, which, as I recall, everyone thought was the best year in the world. There'll be a little bit of personal news, a little bit of content news going forwards, and this may be the last time you see a stream here in this particular setup. So if you'll just bear with me momentarily while I do my usual, which is to go on Twitter and say, hi, I have a stream going. You should come and join me. I'm sure quite a few people will be coming in, dropping questions as per usual, but it's still nice to send the first message out so I'm not immediately exhausting everything I have to say immediately. I've been trying to find a way to make it a little bit smoother. It's not been the most successful so far. Technology, you know? So I am with you now. Oh, I immediately get sent a hug. Isn't that lovely? Hey Pete, how you doing? Welcome guys. So I do have brought up, as per usual, my details on what's going to happen tonight on SmackDown. We do a preview here. We do a little bit of information going into it about what you might expect. We already have our first question. I will get to that very shortly, Sean. I'm having an okay day so far. Ellie, I hope you are having the same. Right. So let's talk about the headline for SmackDown at first. I'm going to talk about this, and I'm going to jump into some questions, and then I'm going to go on to talk about the rest of SmackDown. The main event tonight is going to be the rematch a rematch tag match between Roman Reigns and Jey Uso on one side, and of course, Sheamus and Baron Corbin on the other. Now, I'm not sure Sheamus and Baron Corbin have much of a leg to stand on for a rematch, considering last week they got beat by Jey Uso solo. He beat them, and then Roman came down much later on. So I'm not sure they have much reason to need a rematch, to be completely honest with you, but they have a rematch nonetheless. This looks like it'll play out quite similarly. Maybe Roman will be there for the whole match this time. That would be different and that would be confusing, but that would be very Roman at the moment. Outside of that, if Sheamus and Corbin win, it's definitely going to be at Jey Uso's expense. I don't think that would surprise anyone. If anything, tonight, I don't think we'll see Roman Reigns actually enter the match until it's too late. I have a couple of questions, so I'm going to jump in on them while we continue to build some steam. Sean Garner says, what's the deal with Tessa being in the 2K Battlegrounds game? That is a good question. The game is not currently released, which means there is no creation being made by non-WWE and non-WWE Battleground staff. That's a confusing prospect because it means that Tessa Blanchard was put in there under the direction of the WWE. That says everything. I've said for a while that I suspect Tessa's eventual landing place will be the WWE. I don't believe there is any interest from from AEW, I should say, but I believe there is interest from WWE. There has been reports that she's been in contact with Triple H that I'm aware of. So I think that is a clear indicator that that is where they are heading. She just hasn't been announced yet. She also did lose her Warrior Wrestling Women's Championship over last weekend, so that could be a clear indicator. Nikunj says, other than the Roman tag match, what else was happening? There's a moment of bliss has been mentioned. There is a return of Sasha Banks. Yes, she is confirmed as appearing, not necessarily appearing in the arena, though. So that's a question worth looking at. Also, they have just announced AJ Styles versus Sami Zayn. I say just a little while ago. I've not been on Twitter that much today. Following on from that, you ask, is Sasha coming for sure? Now, I did mention that a moment ago, but let's go into it with more depth. They have been advertising on American TV for days that Sasha Banks would be returning to essentially square up with Bayley, but I can't see that happening, particularly when they still have to build to Bayley versus Nikki Cross at the upcoming Clash of Champions show. So I don't believe Sasha and Bayley are going to get into it, as it were. My suspicion, knowing that they've announced that Sasha Banks has left the hospital, as it were, knowing that, my suspicion is that we will see her via either satellite link, as in on the big screen, or she will appear in a brief segment recorded from home, as it were. That's my suspicion on that, and that's what I suspect we're going to see. When it comes to Sasha and Bayley, they definitely won't rush this. They will take a little bit of time. They won't be coming to blows every single week, leading into what I suspect is going to be the match at Hell in a Cell rather than a match later on, for example, kept till WrestleMania. Naresh Cannon says, do you think Bray Wyatt is going to appear on the Moment of Bliss? I don't at the moment, because at the moment, Bray Wyatt is very much doing his own thing independent of Alexa Bliss, whereas she is entranced and trying to tempt him. She is essentially trying to recreate herself in an image that is appealing to him. So for now, I don't think Bray Wyatt is going to come for her. I think she is going for Bray Wyatt, and they'll play that out quite calmly as well. We will obviously see Alexa Bliss tonight, and they will further that storyline, but I think Bliss and Cross are going to have their storyline play out leading into Clash of Champions a bit more. This may be one of those championship matches, particularly the SmackDown Women's Championship match, that essentially is just a case of Alexa working with Nikki, Bayley working with Banks, and then at some point they clash, even though they have separate storylines. Could also potentially be a tag match where we see Nikki Cross and Sasha Banks versus Bayley and Alexa Bliss. I don't think we're far off seeing that match for sure. Peter Roberts says, does the WWE have any plans for Otis's Money in the Bank contract? Well, if they do, you could have fooled me, because at the moment it really looks like he's essentially out on a limb, out on his own, and there isn't much of a plan for what to do with him. That's certainly the impression I get. When it comes to Otis and the Money in the Bank contract, they have at least given him consistent storyline and character development over the last few weeks. Working with the Miz and Morrison has done in the world of good in there, and it's made Tucker more of a player, as it were. We didn't see Mandy Rose on Raw, which definitely tells me this is a storyline trade rather than a natural trade. Mandy Rose is expected to take a little bit more time off before she does return, but we could see her as soon as tonight. She has taken time off after SummerSlam. I did report that was mentioned, and that she was pitched the idea that she could take time off if she wanted to, and she did take it. So it's a hectic storyline they've got at the moment when it comes to Otis. We'll see going forward what they've got for it. Noob says, hello, Mr. Colhue, how are you doing? Thank you for asking, Noob. I'm doing okay. There will be a bit of personal news going on a bit later, which will update people on that. But essentially, to be brief, there has been government decisions about my local area, which have had a bit of an effect on me, got to be honest. Kind of disappointing. But hopefully, things are in the works that I can essentially make a brief move, which will be a massive relief, if nothing else. Apologize, as usual, if you can hear the ice cream van outside. Sean Garner says, when do you think Tessa's signing will be announced? I cannot at this point say that the WWE have signed Tessa. There are simply considerable rumors and more indicators as time goes on that that is what is going to happen. Tessa Blanchard, like I said, has been relieved of the Warrior Wrestling Women's Championship. The 3 Ws really get me. They really get me. She lost that to Kylie Ray at a show last weekend in a very good match that I do suggest people check out. But at the moment, there is no official confirmation of signing from WWE to Tessa Blanchard. So at the moment, there is nothing official, even though it is very telling that she's in, or at least hardwired into coding, for the 2K Battlegrounds game. Hasn't been released yet, that game. There hasn't been any fan creations. So that was put in there by WWE. Nick Hunter says, will Braun be back, or is he drafted to Raw Underground for now? Raw Underground operates in this very unique position whereby essentially if you're on Raw Underground, it doesn't matter whether you're on Raw or SmackDown, you can come and you can go. And I think we'll see a lot more of that in the future, SmackDown stars appearing. I'd like to see Cesaro on Raw Underground, for example. At the moment, I did reach out and I was told that Braun is still technically a SmackDown talent. They're just giving him something to do that's different for a little while to get him away from the Fiend. That said, heavy rumors of a draft incoming, and when the draft does arrive, anything could happen. A lot of people could be moved around. When it comes to the draft, it tends to be decisions are made last minute, or at least in the shake-ups, decisions have been made last minute. Whereas last year, when it comes to the draft, they released a detailed list of everyone who would be moving accidentally beforehand. Naresh says, Does that mean Alexa is not now, but in coming week will Alexa visit the Firefly Funhouse? Based on what I've been saying, I see where you got this from, and I completely agree that is the most likely scenario. We know that people can turn up at the Firefly Funhouse now. We've had Seth Rollins do it. We've had Braun Strowman do it. Once again, apologies for the ice cream van. This is a last stop it makes before it moves on. And then after that, we saw Adam Pearce arrive at the Firefly Funhouse. So it's not exactly hard to find. The image I get is just of literally a pop-up building inside the arena in a shed somewhere, and everyone sees it and just goes, "Oh, is that Bray? Let's just leave him be. Let's just leave him be." So I think Alexa will start to go essentially hunting the Fiend at some point soon. That's the most likely scenario for me. The most likely end result of this storyline. That's what I see happening. Sean Garner says, since Mandy Rose moved to Raw, who do you think beats Bayley for the title? Firstly, it depends how long Mandy Rose has been moved to Raw. I was of the opinion that she would be the next women's champion on SmackDown. A lot seems to have changed since SummerSlam. I'll say that based on what was originally planned in that regard. However, Sasha Banks is definitely going to get the rub here. She's definitely in the picture, as it were. And there were rumors that Naomi was going to get a push. That doesn't seem to have happened. There is a lot of confusing information right now as to who's getting pushed and who isn't. There is just a lot happening. Nick Hunch says, is Matt Riddle out because of the court case? He's not out. And certainly, court case or no, he will still be featured on WWE SmackDown. Just that whatever the initial plan was, there was a report by Dave Meltzer that Matt Riddle versus AJ Styles was supposed to be the plan for SummerSlam, and that changed since, which definitely suggests that the initial push plan for Matt Riddle has been pulled out from under him. So whatever happened there, and it could be partly to do with the court case, whatever has happened, the WWE have always been very clear that it's business as usual. It's right outside my door now. It's September. Apologies as usual. Once again, for the ice cream van, I need to pick a different time, but the clocks will be moving soon, so the same time for you guys will be different for me. Who knows? But Matt Riddle will still feature on SmackDown. Matt Riddle will still be pushed in some capacity. However, right now he doesn't have whatever his original storyline was. I know that there was also a rumor that Matt Riddle would be facing off against Baron Corbin after working with 5 enhancement talents. That, again, does not seem to have come to fruition. Nuben Code says, who is really the IC champion? Well, when it comes to WWE, they are of the consideration that there are 2 IC champions right now, that being Sami Zayn and Jeff Hardy. The 2 have worked independently, but they will definitely be clashing coming up to Clash of Champions to decide who is then the real Intercontinental Champion. My opinion is that Sami Zayn will be retaining, but there was, of course, news recently that definitely suggested that Jeff Hardy has signed a new contract. If you've been tracking my podcast and my work here, I've been keeping everyone as updated as possible with this, that sort of at the middle of the year, working with Sheamus, there was a worry in the WWE that Jeff Hardy was not interested in signing a new contract. They started making some storyline offers because they couldn't offer him more money due to the current global pandemic. And they seem to have convinced him primarily via no more words and the return of that theme. So I think that is what we'll see going forwards. We could see Jeff Hardy retain, and that may have been promised to him to get him to sign. The IC Championship initially from Styles may have been promised to him to get him to sign. I don't think we'll see no more words for a little while yet, but if we see it at Clash of Champions, he's definitely coming away the winner. Naresh says, when do you think Sonya Deville will return? If she does return, do you think WWE will do Sonya Deville versus Sasha Banks for SmackDown Championship match if Sasha wins at Hell in a Cell? I think that's a great way to go, particularly with Mandy Rose moving across to Raw. Again, I don't know how long that will be for, but with Mandy Rose moving across, we are lacking a top-level talent on SmackDown right now. There's a lot of very, very talented people as regards the women's division on SmackDown. I think they need to push Naomi a lot more than they do. I think they need to push Carmella a lot more than they do, but right now the situation is that Sasha Banks will need new challengers, and Sonya Deville would be the cream of the crop for me, coming in as a heel if Sasha Banks is in fact turning face at this point, and certainly changing the game, as it were. Sonya Deville would be the perfect next challenger for Sasha Banks, if you ask me, but I don't believe she will be returning immediately after Hell in a Cell. She may be returning for the draft, but we can't say for certain whether she's returning at all at this point. Peter Roberts said, will the WWE renew their Amway Center deal? They are going to try. That is definitely their plan. However, they have started exploring different options at the moment. WrestleVotes, I believe it was, reported that they have put a team together to look for outdoor venues, which would mean that they are able to bring more people in and bring in actual crowds at lower capacity. Again, if you've been following here, I've been trying to keep as up to date as possible when it comes to this. But the WWE's intention was always to renegotiate that deal so that they could have fans in attendance. If they can't have fans in attendance at the Amway Center, they will go somewhere else because their priority is getting people in. Even if it's 10, 20%, they want fans. They want a crowd, and they will try whatever it takes to do that, which is why they're exploring different options at the moment. Nick Hunter said, most faces on SmackDown are kayfabe injured or on creative hiatus or really injured. There aren't that many faces left on SmackDown at the moment, to be honest with you. The appearance of Wobbly Walrus is there to essentially strengthen the face turn of Bray Wyatt by giving him a constant opponent, someone who will be in the Firefly Funhouse, taking over, as it were, and trying to change the game. I realize I'm a little bit behind on my questions. I will try and catch up shortly. If you have asked a question, please bear with me because I will get to it. When it comes to most faces on SmackDown, I don't believe most faces are, but there has been some changes at the top recently, which is why we're seeing Matt Riddle maybe not get the push he expected, Big E getting injured last week. So we'll see what happens next. Sean Garner says, when do you think Ember Moon returns? Ember has openly said that she believes it's highly possible that her current injury is career ending. So I really can't speculate on that one. Garen Edwards says, hi, Tom. Hi, Garen. Welcome. Storytar says, hi again. Welcome back, Storytar. Ricochet is staying or leaving? Ricochet is staying at the moment. He has been quite open that as he has announced that his intention is to stay. So I'm essentially getting this information direct from Ricochet's Twitter account. And when it comes to that, everyone right now is in a bit of a flux position. Nothing is set in stone. So even if Ricochet comes out and says, I'm staying, and then a year later the WWE decides to release him, that's not on him. So it's a difficult one. It's a difficult situation for him, certainly getting these rumors spread about him. And I think it would be really beneficial at this point if we let this story just slide under the carpet, because it's doing no one any favors. It's not helping the people who reported it. It's not helping Ricochet himself, and it's not helping any sources who may have given people varying information. Michael Latina says, some people on Twitter thought Sasha should be out till the Rumble. What are your thoughts on that? Should it be sooner? I know she'll be on tonight, or wait? I think if Mandy Rose was still there, we'd very much be leaning into Mandy Rose versus Bayley next. However, the situation has now changed. It could be that this was a late decision. It could be that with a draft coming up, they've decided to do Sasha Bayley early from where they originally planned. Or it could simply be that it was never planned to be a WrestleMania match. And when I reported on I believe, on this show last week, 2 weeks ago, that for Hell in a Cell, they were lacking a big women's match. So they want to try and make a big blood feud happen. It could be that that was the intention there. So I would like to see Sasha out till the Rumble and then have the big WrestleMania match, but I don't think they will at this point. Naresh says, if Big E didn't get Universal title match with Roman at WrestleMania, do you think Big E will get a chance at an IC title match? If he gets the IC match, do you think he will win? The IC Championship division is quite strong at the moment, I've got to say. When you look at even just three guys in it, AJ Styles, Sami Zayn, Jeff Hardy, if you add Big E and maybe Matt Riddle to that, you've got a very strong division. Three faces, two heels, a heel champion. So I'd like to see Big E get that. I would have liked to see Big E get the SummerSlam match against AJ Styles. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. They went in a different direction. And to me, it looks like they're sort of treading water with Big E a little bit, and I think that's a shame. I'd like to see him pushed a bit harder. I would have liked to see him against The Fiend, but clearly with Roman returning, they decided not to do that. And I just don't expect we're going to see him pushed all the way until WrestleMania, particularly when Kofi Kingston said he'd be out for 6 weeks, and that 6 weeks has already expired. And Anne says, I think the reason why Banks has been booked for tomorrow is after she cuts her promo, Bayley may attack her again, and this time Banks will be out for Bayley to... How Bayley will get more heat. Your thoughts? My thoughts on that are it's possible. I'm not entirely sure Banks will be there tonight. I don't think they're going to particularly interact in that way. But if she does, that certainly writes Sasha Banks off for a while longer. It was a very intense beatdown that she took after all. Manny Santos says, with Mandy going to Raw, is she already set for a feud? At the moment, it doesn't look like it. She was moved to Raw, and this looks like it was very last minute. So it could be that this is purely for storyline. It could be that this is a SmackDown storyline still, as has been suggested to me. But I do hope we see her on Raw sooner rather than later, maybe against Peyton Royce. Who knows? Anan says, why is WWE booking a feud between the Street Profits and Cesaro and Nakamura? Is this because currently they are not able to find suitable opponents for the respective brand tag champs? Well, Cesaro and Nakamura and the Street Profits aren't technically in a feud. It was a one-time match, and they will now go their separate ways. The plans going forward, when the Street Profits won, my prediction was that the Street Profits would win, and we'd see a new collection of tag teams stepping in. My expectation at the time was Authors of Pain, because I'd heard that Authors of Pain were coming back. However, Authors of Pain were then released just after essentially being cleared to wrestle. So whatever happened there, we will probably never find out. After that, it looked like potentially Rey and Dominic Mysterio could be stepping up. However, then Rey Mysterio tore his triceps, and Seth Rollins and Buddy Murphy are already breaking up, as it were. So I don't think the Street Profits have any challenges for Clash of Champions. Maybe we get Andrade and Garza again, but Andrade and Garza have already split up. Maybe we get the Viking Raiders again, but Ivar is injured. There's no tag teams left, to be completely honest with you, for the Street Profits to feud with. So if they decide to go once again with Cesaro and Nakamura, I have been told it's a one-time thing, but that was before a lot of injuries stacked up. Sean Garner says, who do you think beats Asuka for the title? It's a very good question. I don't think there's the strongest panel at the moment. If you take Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax out of the picture as the tag champions, they are working independently. However, I do still think it may be a while, but Shayna Baszler for me should be the person who beats Asuka for the title. I think Baszler's been put over properly the last couple of weeks. She's been shown to be as strong as she is, and she has good history of Asuka already, which is rare. Jacob Mendoza says, hi Tom, hi Jacob, welcome. Nick Hunter says, what do you think of people saying Wobbly Walrus was introduced as a shoot knock to Paul Heyman? It was not introduced as a shoot knock to Paul Heyman. Wobbly Walrus was introduced to Paul Heyman, and Paul Heyman cleared it before they went ahead with it. This isn't a jab or anything like that. This is very much people working together to create something. So Wobbly Walrus not there as a shoot jab to Paul Heyman. It's very much something that he was aware of going into it. Ellie Lynn said, could Charlotte Flair potentially be going to SmackDown whenever she does return? Pretty much. I mean, if there is a draft coming up, as has been heavily rumored, then anyone could be anywhere. And we don't know when Charlotte Flair is going to return. So it could be early next year, late the end of this year, and a draft would have already happened, so she could be going anywhere. It's almost impossible to even pitch storylines right now, because with the draft coming, there could be a whole sea of change. Naresh says, do you think at Clash of Champions, Roman not only beats Jey Uso, but he's going to put him through a table or use a chair to injure him, and that brings Jimmy Uso back for a match against Roman? I do not. Jimmy Uso is not expected back until right at the end of this year, potentially around Royal Rumble time, which is roughly when they came back last year. And if you were watching my YouTube videos on that leading up to it, January in particular last year, I reported a lot of news, and some of that was the Usos due to return, some of that was AJ Styles moving across to SmackDown after WrestleMania, some of that was, for example, Nia Jax being cleared but not being used in the Royal Rumble and instead being saved until WrestleMania. So I had a good run on that one, but I think at this one he will probably put Jey Uso out after a fashion, but I think that will be more because they have no plans to use Jey Uso afterwards until his brother returns. Jimmy and Jay are still a tag team. This is just a way to tide over, as it were. And Anne says, do you think Ricochet and Ali could be drafted back to NXT? There they may get better opportunities. I don't think that'd be a bad shout. I don't think that's a bad idea at all. I think there's quite a few people who will get better opportunities with a move to NXT. And knowing that the draft upcoming, Triple H has alluded to the idea that NXT are involved. And I have reported myself at the end of last year that the next draft or shakeup would include NXT. And they will be bringing in people who highlight the NXT spirit, as it were. I think that is something definitely likely. My belief is that someone like Naomi will be moving to NXT. She has mentioned previously that she is interested in going back, and I'm aware that she is on a short list that the WWE keep of people who've asked to return to NXT. That short list will inform a lot of the decision-making in this draft. Nick Kunj also says, if they wanted Sasha versus Bayley to have fans, why did they move Hell in a Cell? Not sure. I'm not aware that they want Sasha and Bayley to have fans, as it were, but it could simply be that they've moved Hell in a Cell to make sure it's at the Amway Center, whereas previously it would have been after their contract expired and they can't be certain of renegotiating it. The fact that they've moved Hell in a Cell And the fact that they are exploring the possibility of outdoor arenas at the moment suggests to me that they are not confident of getting a renewed contract. RH Parvez says, I've noticed that in almost every tag match from a hardcam view, heel team takes right near corner and face team takes far left corner. Why is that? Because the hard cam will be on the back of the heels and the front of the faces. So you get the actual face of the faces. That's the important thing for the hard cam to do, because heels, you're not really meant to relate to them and associate with them. They're the bad guys. So that's why they will usually have their back to the camera. It's one of those weird little things you tend to get. Nuben Cole says, if we get Sasha versus Bayley, do you think we might? If we get Sasha versus Bayley when live crowds return, do you think we might get Asuka versus Shayna Baszler when live crowds return? Certainly possible. There are quite a few things they have openly stated that they are saving for live crowds. You look at Jeff Hardy recently saying when No More Words returns, we want it to be with a live crowd. That is something that the WWE are very aware of. They want to make sure that they have live crowds for some of these big moments, as it were. And I think in saving this match, they could do that. However, at the moment, there just isn't reason to be confident that it is coming anytime soon. Again, there'll be a bit of news about me a bit later once questions have died down a bit, talking about a second wave here in the UK. AK Ray says, hey Tom, did you love the parking lot brawl? AEW was far better than Cole versus Dream backlot brawl. The Cole versus Dream backlot brawl for me was overproduced and had quite a bit of shaky cam, even though the action was very good. The parking lot brawl in AEW was a bit smoother. We had a comedy spot with Orange Cassidy. They made it interesting, and that for me was more important. And in addition, it was of course the main event, and that gives it a heightened, well, an elevated importance. For me, the main event should always be the main event. Sean Garner says, do you think Liv Morgan ever becomes women's champion? I do. I do believe they have big plans for Liv Morgan. She has been improving in delivery and in ring smoothness for a while now. I think she is a very major talent and fans are behind her. If you want to see Liv Morgan become a women's champion, they'll keep pushing the WWE to do it on social media and the like. Ellie Lynn says, thoughts on Zelina Vega going for the Raw Women's Championship? Do you think Zelina could possibly win the title? Unfortunately, I don't think she's going to win the title. However, I do think we're going to get a really good match. If you've been following Zelina Vega and Aleister Black's YouTube channel, you will know the training that they undergo and the physical capabilities that they have. And that means for me, this is just a really exciting potential match. I really have wanted to see this for a while, and I really think it's going to deliver. Nick Hunter said this was a bad month for wrestlers getting injured. Completely agree. A lot of people, unfortunately, did pick up injuries, and it's meant that already a small amount of wrestlers for Monday Night Raw, particularly where they need to be using Ali and people like this rather than using Cedric Alexander in 2 matches and 4 segments, for example. It's meant they've got even less people. So we are likely to see maybe multiple Seth Rollins segments and so on and so forth. Obviously, Seth Rollins intended to be away come November, December time. AK Ray says, any update on participants for next week's NXT Eliminator Gauntlet match? Not at the moment. From what I can tell, it's going to be a diverse group. It's going to be quite a large field, as it were. It won't be the usual 6 or 7 that you get for a Gauntlet match. It'll be quite a few more, and it'll be a hectic match. I don't expect we're going to see more than 4 or 5 people at once in the ring, though. My expectation, they are building up Kushida, and that's a match I'd really like to see. But for me, Tommaso Ciampa is the obvious choice here, so they may go that way. Anand Vazwani says, I'm afraid the way Reigns has been booked till now, they will book him in a squash kind of match against Uso. Thoughts? Certainly possible, but I don't believe they will have a squash. I don't believe Roman or Jey wants the match to be a squash, nor does Paul Heyman. I think it'll be about a 10-minute match. It'll start out very even and then become a squash in the last 3 or 4 minutes after a few Paul Heyman distractions. That's what I expect, at least. But we're really going to see a different Roman for this match. He will be there the full match, and he's going to have that Kevin Owens, why am I here mentality that I really liked when Owens was a heel. Peter Roberts says, what do you think of Drew McIntyre and Randy Orton's new stipulation ambulance match? Or do they want to protect Randy Orton because I think he will lose against Drew McIntyre at Clash of Champions? That's it for me. They are essentially trying to push Keith Lee, and it looks like more than anything, he's been a spoiler here. Like, I can't sit here and say that Keith Lee has been pushed to the moon, even though he's had 2 wins. That's in 6 matches so far. For me, he's been more of a spoiler. And the fact that they have seen the challenge issued, Drew McIntyre to Randy Orton about an ambulance match. I've never seen a triple threat ambulance match. So I don't believe Keith Lee is going to be involved at this point. I think Randy Orton is going to take a week, maybe 2 off, return, interfere in a match, probably this upcoming week, a rematch between Drew McIntyre and Keith Lee, and then we will have the ambulance match clarified. At that point, the ambulance match is something that you can lose inconclusively. Certainly, we could, for example, see Keith Lee getting involved in the ambulance match, and then that will lead to a match at Hell in a Cell between McIntyre and Orton. And Anvazwani says, Braun has been traded to Raw secretly. To my knowledge, Braun has not been traded to Raw. He is still a SmackDown guy, but he has appeared on Raw Underground because it works in its own little dynamic. Naresh says, do you think Piper Niven is going to win the NXT UK women's title from Kaylee Ray? Difficult question. Looking at the field they've got there, when it comes to the women's division at NXT UK, it's stacked with talent, but they've only really pushed a certain amount of people. And we haven't seen any advertisement for Toni Storm, for example. So the fact that those three have been locked in a feud, and in fact, Kaylee Ray and Piper Niven have been locked in a feud for so long, suggests that Piper Niven will be taking the championship. However, there is a lack of heels for her to face lower down the card. We could see Ginny, for example. I think Ginny's been getting some interviews recently, so I think she may be one who's going to get a push. So I would say yes, but don't quote me on that. As has been happening recently, a few people have been quoting me on things that I have not said. Anon says, any spoilers on the number one contenders match schedules for both NXT Women and NXT Championship next week? If I had spoilers, I wouldn't share them. I don't like to spoil match finishes, as it were. And once again, WWE as it is, it's all up in the air. So spoilers that I've had have been changed after I reported them. I've fallen foul of that in the past, and it's led to a few changes in the way I've been doing things recently. So if I had spoilers, I would not be sharing them. Sean Garner says, who do you think beats EO for the title? It's a good question. It could last a while. For me, Raquel Gonzalez is being built up in that position. When it was Charlotte, I was hearing that Tegan Nox was being considered, maybe Candice LeRae as well. There are a number of possibilities. Rhea Ripley, I think, is out. I think she'll be coming up in the draft, but I think she'll be losing to Raquel Gonzalez on the way out. Nick says, last week in the pre-match, Lucha House Party teased a breakup. They were fine in the match. What exactly is going to happen? I think at the moment, the WWE can't afford to break up any more tag teams. Bear with me one sec. Right. So I think at the moment they don't want to break up any more tag teams. There was obviously something going on that they wanted to be breaking them up. They were obviously teasing that and testing the water. There is still an undercurrent there, but from what I can tell, they just want to keep hold of them for now because they're running out and they need to be drafting some teams from SmackDown over to Raw sooner rather than later. They really need to. Lucha House Party might be one of those, but at the same time, they have made it so it looks like Kalisto is the problem, which means Kalisto could be getting a singles push in the future, and the Lucha House Party would still be a tag team with Lince Dorado and Gran Metalik. Newman Co says, do you think Shotzi Blackheart will challenge Io Shirai for the NXT Women's title at NXT TakeOff in October? I think she's a logical choice at the moment. Everyone else is already tied up. Ripley and Gonzalez are tied up. LeRae and Tegan Nox are tied up, and Dakota Kai's already had her chance. So I think there aren't many other people. Shotzi may get her chance there, especially if the match that they already had did not end conclusively. Ellie Lynn says, thoughts on the AEW and NXT ratings from this week? Do you think with NXT having a decline in viewers, they will move nights? It was a decline for both shows. It wasn't a considerable decline, I will say that, but it was a decline nonetheless. So there are definitely rumors that NXT is considering changing nights. I don't have any information about it, but if it does happen, Tuesday seems to be the popular choice with it. I don't know if they will move NXT because they may consider it a greater victory to slow AEW's ascent, as it were. But AEW is just going from strength to strength, and they will hit 1 million even with competition at some point soon. I say that with absolute surety, as it were. Norris says, don't worry, I won't quote you on that. What do you think is going to happen with NXT UK Championship? Do you think Ilya has got a chance? I think Ilya Dragovich has got every chance of winning the NXT UK Championship. I think a large part of that is Volta, who we've interviewed before, and I've interviewed twice at this point, and once he tried to steal my phone, bless him. I don't think Walter necessarily wants to move to the UK full-time, as would be required when it comes to this. He did previously fly in, do tapings and such, and then fly back out. But at the moment, it will be very difficult to do that with the current situation. So I suspect he may lose the championship, at least for a little while. But as said, don't quote me on that. And said Finn Balor has been referred as Prince by commentators on NXT. Do you think Balor will turn heel in future? Generally, face is not referred to Prince kind of gimmick. Your thoughts? Finn Balor came into NXT as a heel. However, he has reached a point now where he is both face and heel, and neither at the same time. You can reach a certain level in wrestling whereby you become above face and heel. Finn Balor has definitely reached that level. So I think that gimmick is very much based around that. He is simply the Prince and he does not care whether he's face or heel. He can work with anyone. AK Ray says, if you have to use wrestling phrases in real life, which ones would you choose? Ooh. Well, occasionally I shout game over at my TV screen if I'm playing a game and I win it, or I really suck. Maybe that. I'd like to use if you smell what The Rock is cooking, but that's mostly because I'd love it if The Rock one day just made me a nice big dinner. That'd be lovely. Sean Garner says, when do you think Chelsea Blackheart gets called up? Not sure. I think she'll be in NXT for maybe a year yet, personally. I think it's not that she needs more development. It's just that she hasn't been featured as much on NXT as she could have been. I think she can build her style there before moving up. Sideways. Nickon said, is Lindsay Dorado leaving with the post he shared saying goodbye? I can't get a conclusive answer on that. I just can't. So that makes it difficult for me to say anything there. If Lindsay Dorado does leave, they will immediately get rid of everything with Kalisto and the Lucha House Party breakup, and we'll see Kalisto and Gran Metalik working as a tag team. It could be that the fact that Kalisto and Lindsay are the ones having the problems, it could be that they are suggesting that his contract may be coming to an end. Again, this is just me speculating. And that could result in a beatdown from Metalik and Kalisto, and that's it for Lindsay Dorado. Who knows? AK Ray says WWE needs a Dusty Rhodes tag team tournament on the main roster to make some new teams with underused talent and continue with them in tag team division. I think that's a really good shout. I would very much like to see that. And I think there's a lot of people they're not using at the moment that could really benefit from that. So I think that's a very good call. And Nick also says, anything regarding King of the Ring coming back? At the moment, there are no plans to bring the King of the Ring back. However, that could happen later in the year when there are fans back. So at the moment, I don't have questions. Please do keep your questions coming. I do want to make this live stream last at least a little bit longer. It's one of my shorter ones so far, but I do want to talk a little bit about personal news. So this may be the last time you see this backdrop on a Friday. You may see it on a Sunday, but this may be the last time you'll see it on a Friday. Reason for that being that over the last few days, I've been moving my spare room around, which used to be a spare bedroom, and I'm trying to make it into a bit of an office. Then I'll be able to put some decoration up. I've got a painting of a pirate ship I want to put up for no reason. And I've got more random things that I'll put up around it to essentially make the room and the backdrop a little bit more interesting. I'm trying to think of what wrestling things I have other than t-shirts. I may hang a t-shirt up of Seth Rollins or something like that. Maybe, who knows. But that will involve some moving around. You'll get a different backdrop, which I think most people want to see at the moment because this is literally my bedroom. My bed is right there with a cuddly red panda on it, which I'm not going to show you because if I go off for any point, I'm sure all people will start flooding out. But in addition to that, you're going to see more coverage of the G1. And then after the G1 finishes, I will be moving backdrop again because I will be moving, I won't be moving house. I'll be going somewhere else for a little bit. I'll be going to stay with someone else, someone who I love very much, for a little while. I can't say how long for. The idea at the moment is middle of October through to middle of November. However, could be longer. Could be until around Christmas. A large part of the fact that I recently was made redundant from my day job means that I have a lot more freedom now. And I'm able to make decisions like this and spend time with people that I just really, really want to spend time with, you know? There's a lot of people at the moment I really want to spend time with. And I'd like to go down to the south of the country and spend more time with a lot of friends. In addition to that, on Tuesday, this place gets locked down. The town that I live in is going under a local lockdown, which means I simply cannot go and see anyone, really. I would have gone and sat and watched the G1 with one friend, but now we are simply unable to do that. There is going to be a lot less walking around on the streets and a lot less anything, really. So that's going to be very difficult. I hope you guys bear with me because I haven't been the most upbeat about this particular news. I've been struggling a little bit recently, being on my own at all times. One of the reasons I'm planning to go down and see some friends. And also, someone's going to come up here and see me. Thankfully, they're doing it on Monday, so we're going to join the bubble, as it were. So there'll be some changes to the streams, some changes to the backdrop, some changes to the location. And also, when it comes to content, I'm going to start doing quite a bit more. We may be seeing a Raw post show. Let me know if you're interested in a Raw post show straight after Raw right here. It would possibly be just me, but it may also be Rick Ucchino, who you guys have probably seen here quite a bit. It may also be that we get a weekly news podcast. The weekly news podcast on Sportskeeda may not be continuing, or at least it may not be continuing with me in that incarnation. So we'll be moving it here and potentially doing multi-stream here and on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/backstage team. So we may be seeing both in regards to that. Also, I'm looking to do Wednesday videos, just because that is an area. You'll see at the bottom with my slider, I'm talking about watch hours. I need 4,000 watch hours in a 12-month period to get monetized and to start making a living off of YouTube. This is why it's so beneficial to do live streams, but also I see a dip in my watch hours Wednesdays, Thursdays. So I need to do a Wednesday video. So I'm going to do more in-depth stuff. Go back to the stuff that's been really successful from that. That's the plan at the minute. Please do let me know if you like this idea. I would like to do, for example, some videos on how to be a wrestling journalist and what is expected of a wrestling journalist. And I'd also like to do a video on Keith Lee's push and how we're hearing that he's going to get pushed to the moon, but we're not seeing it. And I've got a bit of information to share on that. So let me know if you're interested in stuff like that. And I'm about to get back to questions, but just before that, if you don't follow me on Twitter, follow at Colohue, Colohue. Subscribe here on YouTube if you haven't already, because this is the bread and butter at the moment. This is where all my news is going to be. So, questions. Anan says, where is Dexter Loomis from NXT? Is he injured? He is at the moment, yes. He's going to be out for a little while yet. We're not likely to see him until next year, I suspect. But based on the information available, it's going to be an injury that sees him out for a while. I haven't been keeping track of exactly how long he's going to be injured for. If he turns up in the gauntlet match, egg on my face. But at the moment, yes, he has been injured, and I don't know when he's due back. It may be a while yet. Nuben Co says, do you think that Asuka is a babyface? People liked her as a heel. Do you think that Asuka is booked better as a heel or face? My thoughts. I think Asuka was booked better in NXT. And I think in NXT, Asuka was neither face nor heel. She was above it all. I don't think they booked her like that at all in WWE proper. I think for a while, she was neither. And then she was on creative hiatus because she was neither. Pardon me. And then after that, she was a heel and then a face. I like her as a face. I think she, personality and character development-wise, she's had more as a face. However, when it comes to booking, she still hasn't won a match clean. She just hasn't. There have been distractions or something like that. So as a face, she needs better booking. That's my opinion on that. R.H. Parvez says, why after 2 lengthy promos? I'm yet to understand the motive of Retribution. What is your expectation for the stable? The move to Raw definitely signaled a new beginning for Retribution. Suggested to me that the plans were not in stone. And I did report on here a while previous that there was a lot of disagreements and discussions about how they were going to use Retribution. Just before it was announced that they were Raw full-time, I did mention that there were discussions about whether to use them on SmackDown and on Raw, and how much to use them on pay-per-views and the like. And essentially, the writers on SmackDown weren't that interested in using them, which works out because the writers on SmackDown right now have been writing much the better storylines, in my personal opinion. So my expectations is that this is sort of a renewal. They have the people they want at the moment, that being Shane Thorne, Dominic Dijakovic, Mia Yim, Mercedes Martinez, and Dio Madden. We are likely to see them much more involved, and hopefully we'll see some unmasking soon, but I suspect it'll be a while. And asked for an update on Wade Barrett's deal. It is a full-time announcer deal replacing Mauro Ranallo, who has left the company. There is nothing in there about wrestling, but if they want him to wrestle, they can try and renegotiate that deal. It's been a quickly moving situation. They initially had him in for just one, and now it's an actual deal. And if they want him in for wrestling, he'll be in for wrestling, but I don't expect it at the moment. Naresh says, Keith Lee in a WWE Championship match or Keith Lee in US title match. Which one do you think is going to happen? I suspect we'll see Keith Lee versus Bobby Lashley way before we see Keith Lee challenging for the WWE Championship. It may be that we do see Keith Lee challenge for the WWE Championship on an episode of Raw, but personally, I don't suspect he has any chance of winning it, whereas with the US Championship, I think he's got a very high chance. Ed Fry says, no green screen. At the moment, no, that's something I can potentially look at in the future, but what am I going to put behind here? What am I going to put behind me? I don't know. It may look a lot more professional. I will consider it, but I don't know if green screen works in my current live streaming software. I'll have a look, actually, because if I check the settings, there is literally a green screen setting. God damn it. So maybe, who knows? Also, Ed Fries, as usual, when I see your name, thank you very much for signing me up to the Stephen Larson Going In Raw Twitch. I very much appreciate that. AK Ray says, would you like to see AJ Styles jump into AEW during Dynamite debut? Personally, being a huge fan of AJ, I think it would have been great. It absolutely would have been great. AJ Styles is a very, very talented man. I strongly believe he is the best wrestler in the world. And in AEW, he would have continued to have great matches with a lot of different opponents that we haven't already seen. So it would have been thrilling. However, he decided to commit to WWE, so we have what we have. And he's done very good things since. Consider, for example, the Boneyard match. Sean Garner says, who do you think faces Bobby Lashley at the for the US title at Clash of Champions? Apollo Crews will get a rematch at Clash of Champions. Nick Hunter's asked for a card prediction. So from the matches we've seen so far, Roman Reigns against Jey Uso. Let me know if I miss any titles, and I'll get to them when I get to that question. Drew McIntyre versus Randy Orton in the ambulance match. For the Women's Championships, we already have for SmackDown, Bayley versus Nikki Cross. I suspect for Raw, it will be Zelina Vega versus Asuka. When it comes to tag championships, I suspect we'll see Cesaro Nakamura against Lucha House Party again, and I suspect we'll see Andrade and Garza against Street Profits again if the Street Profits feature. They want to have every championship on the card, but if they don't have people there to defend them against, they're just not going to do it. Beyond that, let's see. US title, Apollo Crews versus Bobby Lashley. Intercontinental Championship, AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy, Sami Zayn. I think that's everything. And we will see the 24/7 Championship change hands, but not in a match. Nick Hunter said he'd love to see a Raw post-show if Raw gets any better. Even if it doesn't get better, I'd still probably do it and see what interest there is in it. Why not try? Anan says, weekly news podcast would be interesting. Looking forward to it. That's certainly something that could be in the offing, as it were. And Manny says, that'd be pretty cool. RH Parva says, I really like your in-depth analysis videos. Thank you for that. That is something that could be very interesting. Anan says, you should make a video on how to make a wrestling journalist. Would be very helpful. I get a lot of questions about wrestling journalism. I think I can at least share some of my experiences in the field and essentially see how it goes from there. AK Ray says, are we headed for Cole Riley versus Fish Strong for Undisputed Era? I do suspect we are. I think that is something that's going to be happening soon. And I have reported that there are some issues with a full call for the Undisputed Era. I did mention at that time that we are looking at potentially a breaking up on NXT in order to allow some people to come up and some people to stay in NXT. That is something I reported 2 months ago, something like that. And that seems to be playing out as we speak. Nick Hunter said, Ronda Rousey teased coming back. Any news on that? Ronda Rousey initially was wrestling from WrestleMania to WrestleMania, so for 12 months. The WWE did announce that she had a 3-year contract, but for the last year and a half, we have seen nothing of her. Ronda Rousey does occasionally tease coming back. She does mention that she wants to have a match with this person or that person. That is something we see quite a lot from Ronda, and there is still ongoing conversations between Ronda Rousey and the WWE, as we have seen with her visits to the head office with Cain Velasquez, when they essentially were brought in and said, okay, what do you want to do with this and how do you want to go? When it comes to Ronda Rousey, I do not think we'll see her before fans return. I think at the earliest, we will see her after WrestleMania, if we see her again at all. Anan says, any reason behind Joe's absence from commentary this week? Nothing that I am personally aware of. It could just be that he was unable to travel. It could be a number of things, but he simply wasn't there at the moment. I do know WWE are giving a lot more time off right now to people who asked for it. So it could just be he asked for a week or 2 weeks off. Nick Hunter says, when will Pat McAfee return to NXT? It's hard to say. At the moment, there is sort of an ongoing discussion, but not necessarily a negotiation about whether he wants to come back and wrestle. The door is open for him if he wants to continue training, which I believe he has continued training. However, from what I was told, that was a one-off at the time. Whether he is offered a contract, we will see. Conversations are ongoing, but it's still very much at the conversation phase. The WWE aren't always like every day saying, come sign a contract, come sign a contract, come sign a contract. Sometimes they'll wait a couple of months and then go, so did you enjoy that match then? Fancy another one? So that is where we're at the moment. AK Ray says, which is the one move you shiver every time you see that move? Mine is Volta's chop. Looks devastating. It does. It does. I would never dare to take it. It looks so painful. There's a couple of moves in New Japan which are terrifying. And pretty much any time Kota Ibushi or Daniel Bryan takes a German suplex, terrifying. Michael Latina says, is Nigel McGuinness going to stay in NXT UK or will be back in NXT when he's able to? There will be a reshuffle when travel becomes more consistent. However, for the moment, it will be NXT UK for the foreseeable future. Riffing says, hi, welcome, Riffing. Riffing also says, is Adam Pearce a new authority figure for Raw and SmackDown? He is an authority figure. He's not a definitive authority figure. He's just there to essentially exert the will. The WWE management are kind of missing having a general manager. Adam Pearce is filling that role at the moment because they don't want to be having Shane McMahon in every segment because of the negative reception to that previously. They want Shane just to be involved in Raw Underground. Adam Pearce has done a great job. He's been really entertaining and I look forward to more. Riffing also says, why has WWE moved Keith Lee to Raw if they never had something planned for him? They clearly did have something planned for him. He stepped in, immediately was working with Randy Orton, got the win. There was clearly a plan, and he's been used as a buffer between McIntyre and Orton for the moment. There is clearly a plan. So that's why he was moved. Norwich says, who do you think is going to challenge Asuka at Hell in a Cell? I don't think she'll get an actual cell match. But for the moment, when it comes to Asuka, I'm not sure who her opponent is going to be. It's a difficult one. I would like to see a rematch with Nikki because I feel Mickie James deserves another match, especially with what happened on Raw. Maybe Natalya, but I think the next big challenger is going to be Shayna Baszler. So I would like to see that at Hell in a Cell. Maybe just don't defend the women's tag titles at that time, whereas the women's tag titles will be defended at Clash of Champions against Morgan and Riot. You don't have to defend them at every pay-per-view. You can still use them as single stars. AK says, I would like to see a John Cena figure in the Firefly Funhouse. I agree. That was a big victory for Bray Wyatt, even though it may never have actually happened. RH Parvez says, who would represent Raw and SmackDown in the draft as there are no GMs? There was no GMs last year when they did the draft. Stephanie McMahon came out, said, here are the changes, and then she went back. So it would likely be the exact same. Anan says, when is Sports Kid's Dropkick discussion episode scheduled next? Dropkick discussion for the last year has dropped every Wednesday, I believe it is. So if it happens, that'll be when it happens. And when it comes to that, I've heard different things from Sportskeeda as to whether or not it's continuing. So I'm asking questions about that. I really enjoy that, but if it doesn't happen at Sportskeeda, it will still happen here. It could be a case of my job title changing recently. You may have noticed on my Twitter bio, it went from senior journalist to contributor and presenter because I'm moving more into a presenter role and doing less news stuff on Sportskeeda. So it may be the podcast simply moves here. You'll still see a news podcast either way. Riffing says, any updates on Jinder Mahal's return? And nothing at the moment. Haven't heard a thing about him for a while. Initial reports suggested that he would be back around this time, but that has not played out. It could just be that he is back, but on creative hiatus, and we'll see him soon. Who can say? Nickon says that he heard Samoa Joe was cleared or about to be cleared. There are rumors that he has been cleared, and he was on the short list of names that was given to Seth Rollins to decide his opponent at SummerSlam. That's why there were a lot of different people involved with Seth Rollins just before SummerSlam. Lauren Goodnight, welcome, Lauren. Thank you for your first question. It's nice to see you again. There's what is the current status of their SA contract now that the pandemic is in force? When it comes to Saudi Arabia, the contract is still ongoing. It is still a 10-year contract. The intention is that any shows they don't produce this year, they will produce next year. I think this is one of the reasons that Hell in a Cell has moved to close a gap where it would have been. So when it comes to Saudi Arabia, my expectation is that next year we will see at least 3 shows. But if we are unable to do shows next year, it may be that we get 5 shows the year after, and they essentially produce a year's worth of programming in Saudi Arabia. Who knows? Riff Feng said, is Cassius Ohno returning to NXT? The moment to my knowledge, he's still NXT UK, but I haven't seen him, so who knows? AK Ray says, is Cesaro the best tag team wrestler around who makes it work with anyone? I wouldn't say the best tag team wrestler around. I think there are some very talented tag team specialists, but he's certainly one of the most diverse and interesting, and can work in many different styles with many different people. It seemed very random when he was paired up with Nakamura and Sami Zayn back in November, especially considering that I'd interviewed him that day about 8 hours before that tag team happened. And I asked him about tag teams, and he said he saw himself as a singles wrestler. Shows how quickly plans can change in wrestling. Screen Critic says, I was legit annoyed at the Mickey match ending on Raw. I completely agree. That was so baffling and confusing. A ref botch. Essentially, she sold so well that the ref was convinced to stop the match, and everyone was confused, and Zelina Vega was ushered out as quickly as possible. Screen Critic, by the way, do cover a lot of wrestling. There is Wrestle Critic as well. So by all means, check out their YouTube. Hopefully in future, I'll be doing a lot more work with you guys, because I'd very much enjoy that. Riff Thing says, I hope that Adam Pearce doesn't become the new John Laurinaitis and face Drew McIntyre at a pay-per-view. Remember Cena versus Laurinaitis? I do. That was the main event of a pay-per-view, and it should never have been. To my knowledge, Adam Pearce is not intending to step in the ring with anyone, but who can tell anymore? Riffing says, is Pineapple Pete no longer with AEW? That is correct. Pineapple Pete is no longer with AEW. That's why I've seen him appearing in different places. Anan says, do you think Rhea Ripley should get a Raw roster call-up and just start a feud with Asuka? I'd like that. I'd very much like that. There's been no hint to me, but I do believe Rhea Ripley is going to get called up sooner rather than later. I think she's a name in the draft, as it were. I think the main roster needs her at the moment, particularly Raw, but wherever she goes. What they need in the women's divisions isn't necessarily more people, it's a reshuffle and to use the ones they have. I would love to see Naomi versus Asuka. I think that's a feud ready to go. I would love to see Carmella versus Bayley. I think that's a long-term feud ready to go. It just hasn't happened yet. Lauren Goodnight says, thank you. You are most welcome, Lauren. Very nice to see you. Riffing says, are Ricochet and Mustafa Ali leaving WWE? I've been given no indication that that is the case. Nickon says he thinks Cassius Ohno was released. I'm not sure of that. I will look it up in future, because I don't want to be here saying it if I've missed a piece of news. Like I say, I haven't been on Twitter much the last few days. A lot has changed as regards my living situation here when it comes to, essentially, in the next few days, it will be official. I've officially become redundant, but my last paycheck is the end of this month. We do have a local lockdown coming in on Tuesday now, as well as changes to how many people you can spend time with. So I've been trying to fit in as much family time as possible. Green Critic also says, thanks, you are again very welcome. I do love the work you guys do, and I would love to be more involved in it maybe in the future. Riffing says, should some former NXT main eventers go to NXT? Guys like Nakamura, Joe, Owens, Zayn, Cesaro, Bo, and more. That would be a stacked NXT. And to be fair, those are guys who haven't been involved all that much on the main roster recently, so it shows they can work without them on that main roster. If you move Sami Zayn, I think that is a real draw. Same with Samoa Joe, same with Nakamura, Owens, all of them. I only highlighted Sami Zayn because he's at the moment the Intercontinental Champion and actually getting pushed on SmackDown. I think Bo Dallas definitely needs a move and a relaunch, as it were, because we just haven't seen enough of him. JL, welcome. Thank you for your first question. I'm curious if Alexa Bliss will get a new entrance since her character is changing. I believe so. I think her current entrance is a bit too happy-go-lucky for what her character will eventually be. But I would love to see her making her entrance alongside The Fiend to The Fiend's entrance music. That, for me, is a thrilling concept. Riffing says, move some new guys to Raw and SmackDown. Yes, I do believe that has become necessary. Just a refresh for me. Anand says, do you think Styles can have one last run as a wrestler with AEW since once his contract expires with WWE in future? I think he could, certainly. AJ Styles is one of those. He can essentially keep going for another 10 years, and I wouldn't worry at all. He takes a beating, but he sells and lands differently. Most wrestlers land on their back. He tends to land on his side and shoulder, which is what screwed up Mick Foley, but AJ Styles seems to be going through the ringer and coming out the other side. Naresh says, do you think Thunder Rosa will sign in with AEW? If she does, do you think she'll win the AEW women's title? I don't believe she will. She is still under contract to the NWA, and I don't believe she will sign to AEW while working for the NWA. That's not something I personally see happening. However, she is working with AEW at the moment. She is in that way drawing more attention to the NWA, who have recently returned. So Thunder Rosa, apologies, is likely to return there sooner rather than later for me. And I do suspect we will see Thunder Rosa versus Hikaru Shida in NWA as a return match. But in that one, Thunder Rosa will pick up the win and retain her title. And says, when will this Rollins and Mysterio feud be over? Aren't they dragging this too much? There's just constant change going on. There's people who are picking up injuries. There are people moving into new feuds. There is a lot of mini divisions right now on Raw, and I want to see them break out of it. I'd like to see this feud move on, as it were. I'd like to see Rollins versus Buddy Murphy happen, even just to separate those. But at the same time, who do they then have Dominic Mysterio working with? So I'd like to see them move into a new feud, potentially with the Hurt Business, the Mysterio family and Hurt Business. I would like to see Dominic Mysterio versus Aleister Black, but I don't think it's going to happen until next month at this point. We are very soon going to see a focus happening on championships going into Clash of Champions, because they don't want that pay-per-view to be too long. So they will very much narrow their focus soon, but we will still see a lot of different storylines happening on Raw. Nick Gunn says, I hope no one gets new music, as new music team is terrible. Well, the new music that they've been getting recently certainly hasn't been earning that much plaudits. Keith Lee's music has certainly earned the ire of a lot of fans, but Alexa Bliss's music I always felt was really good, and I don't think she'll be dropping it anytime soon. She may just make an entrance with The Fiend. Riffing says, is Daniel Vidot part of Retribution? I haven't seen that. The people I've seen definitely suggest, as I've said, Shane Thorne, Dominic Dijakovic, Dio Madden, Mia Yim, Mercedes Martinez. Those are the ones who seem definite. Nick Gunn says, any news regarding Daniel Cormier? At the moment, no. There are still negotiations and conversations ongoing. However, the WWE do not want to be seen to make a big money signing right now when they have just released a lot of people. Riffing says, why is Michael Nakazawa signed to AEW if they don't use him at all, just in some being the elite episodes? There are a lot of people signed to every federation that don't get used all that much. When the moment comes, the moment comes. And I think Nakazawa versus Jericho will be in the offing sooner rather than later, personally. But when it comes to that AEW, there were constant negotiations ongoing as to a new show, a second show. And when that does eventually happen, we will then see a lot more people rotate in and out. Michael Latino says, do you see the NWA women's or men's title being defended on Dynamite or on an AEW pay-per-view in the future? Yes, I do. They are trying to establish a working relationship, AEW and NWA. They are also trying to establish working relationships with Impact and with New Japan. So we may see the NWA championships defended in the AEW. We are also likely to see the AEW Women's Championship defended in NWA as a return, and we'll see from there where it go. Indefinitely Anon, welcome. Thank you for your first question. It says, maybe too early to predict, but do you think Dominic Mysterio is a future WWE or Universal Champion? Yes, I do. I've heard nothing but good things. I reported over a year ago he would not make his debut on NXT, that he would skip NXT altogether, because I kept hearing great things about this man. And I do think in future he will get championships of some degree. I think they'll take their time with him, but he is a star in the making. Riff Thing says, is Dominic winning the WWE Universal title next year? I don't believe he'll win it next year. I think it will be a while yet. Riff Thing says, why is Brandon Vink isn't with Shane Thorne in Retribution? I'm honestly not sure. There may be an injury. There may be plans for him in NXT that we're not aware of. Or it may be that he is in Retribution. He just hasn't been behind the mask as of yet, or been identified in the same way that Shane Thorne has. Guinness Gamer says, hi Tom, so hi Jota signing for Liverpool. I don't know about Jota. I think we need backup striker. I think the fact that Timo Werner was looking at coming in means we need someone. Jota definitely fits that bill, and he can definitely deliver. Thiago has been confirmed. However, that's a very exciting signing for me, because our midfield did need that star power metronome. I can't look past Fabinho, Thiago, and Henderson going forwards, and Henderson is starting to wind down, I believe, in the next few years. I think Alexander-Arnold will be a right back for good now, and I think he'll be our next full-time captain after James Milner leaves the club and Virgil van Dijk becomes vice captain. I think Alexander-Arnold will be the next captain. Riffing said, is AEW getting an authority figure? Could be, not sure. There has been some talk about it in some of the conference calls that an authority figure could happen. However, I don't see it happening for the foreseeable. Naresh says, who do you think is going to win the G1 Climax? That is a really good question. I'm hoping to do some preview work in the next couple of days. I know there will be the first few matches already happening, but I will be looking to do some preview work because I ran out of time this week with a lot of things happening. So I may try and record something later today to come out tomorrow, but it'll be too late. There'll already be matches having gone. It may be that we will be doing a lot more G1 Climax coverage here on this. It may be that you'll see G1 Climax coverage on Stephanie Chase's Instagram. So that's something you can look into there. I think Evil stands a great chance of winning, and I think the final will be Evil versus Jay White, personally. Guinness Gamer says, what's the deal with the other people in Retribution? Are they just going to be non-named members? There are a number of people in Retribution right now who will never be unmasked. There are just a number of people who are never going to be unmasked. So they won't be named. At the moment, no one has been named, but when it comes to actually being unmasked, nothing. And Anne says, Rey Mysterio signed a new contract. Last time I heard he was working without contract till SummerSlam. He was indeed. And Dave Meltzer has said that a contract has been signed. However, I have not seen any official confirmation. It could be that because he's injured at the moment, they are just not willing to announce a new contract. Could be. That is what I suspect it is. But again, speculation. Riffing says, is WWE changing the name of Dominic Dijakovic to Dijak since there is already a Dominic on Raw? And I don't think WWE wants two Dominics. Could be that they split them onto two separate brands. Could be we see Dominic move to SmackDown in the draft. Or it could be that they do move it to just Dijak. Could be. They do have a thing for shortening names to just surnames. It could, in fact, first names. We'll see. But Dominic Mysterio going forwards, there is a plan to change his name to Prince Mysterio, as it were, or something that means Prince. But we'll see how that goes with Finn Balor changing his as well. Nick Hunter says, what got you into wrestling? Well, I walked downstairs when I was 10 years old and wrestling was on. And I've got to say, I fell for the big bad guys. Kane, Undertaker, this was 1998, and Triple H. The first pay-per-view I watched was SummerSlam 98. There is a full hour and a half review of it, really in depth, on this channel, alongside the aforementioned Stephanie Chase, which goes over how I experienced it first and how much I fell for that ladder match between Triple H and The Rock. That's what got me into it, and that's what kept me into it, the big bad guys. Narish says, what do you think is going to happen with the IWGP US title in New Japan? Is there any plan for that title? They are working hard at it. John Moxley has spoken about this in the past. I suspect what's going to happen is they will have a match off US soil and off Japanese soil. AAA is where I believe may be home to it, where they essentially get the title off Moxley and Kenta takes it to Japan. Because at the moment, there isn't a plan for John Moxley to go to Japan because he's still got duties in AEW and he cannot wrestle for New Japan on American soil because of his contract with AEW. So either AEW get a working contract with AEW, with New Japan, which they are trying to make happen, or nothing happens. Hard to say. It may be that Moxley has to get stripped to the title. That might be it. But they are constantly negotiating as to what they do. Guinness Gamer says, I think this is perfect. Shane Thorne and Brendan Vink are the tag team of the group. Mercedes and Medium, the female tag team. Dijak, a single star, give them all the gold as a huge push. Dio Madden also in Retribution, but very much could be. Very much could be. Riff Thing says, I think I saw Mike Kanellis in the crowd yesterday at NXT. Unlikely, gotta say, unlikely. Riff Thing says, are DIY reuniting soon? I haven't heard anything about that. Really haven't. When it comes to, oh God, people just realized I've actually opened up about my age. Yes, I have. DIY reuniting soon. I find it unlikely. Their last reunite wasn't exactly tremendous, but if they need tag teams and if there is no plan for Gargano and Ciampa, which at the moment it really looks like there isn't, that could be a way to at least get them some TV time. Guinness Gamer says, no way, Tommy, you're 30, don't look a day over 25. Thank you for that, but my hair is going extremely grey, so I don't entirely believe you. Yes, I am in my 30s, early 30s, but 30s nonetheless. Lauren Goodnight says, Lord, I didn't know I had a full decade on you. Wow, thank you very much. Yes, I am in my 30s. For my 30th birthday, my niece, who was 7 or 8 at the time, 7, bought me a card that had Roman Reigns on it that was for an 8-year-old, and she just scribbled out the 8 and wrote 30 on it. Yeah, I'll show you guys that card one time. Anand says, according to you, which match was booked brilliantly in terms of storytelling in recent times? Hell in a Cell, Becky Lynch and Sasha Banks. That was a great one. Shayna Baszler and Nia Jax versus Sasha Banks and Bayley. That was great. That was fantastic. And in addition, I'd say Seth versus Dominic in the Street Fight at SummerSlam was just great storytelling in that regard. There's also quite a few good ones in AEW. I love everything Jon Moxley is doing at the minute. His storytelling, second to none. Really second to none at the moment. Ripping says, any updates on NXT Japan or NXT Mexico? No updates that I can give at this point in time. When it comes to the idea of an NXT Japan or an NXT Mexico, the idea of branching out, as it were, is something that's been discussed for a while. I did talk to Triple H about it in January, about the expansion they are looking for. And I do suspect we are going to see that. But at the moment, they can't do anything. They can't travel far enough across places to make things happen. Infinitely Anon says, do you think Jake Hager is a future AEW World Champion? Yeah, why not? I think he has everything they need in a World Champion. And I think they need people to represent the brand who are there and representing. I think that's certainly possible. But I think when it comes to the AEW World Championship, there is not going to be that many people who get it per decade, to be honest. When you look at how long Jericho was a champion, how long Moxley was a champion, they're not going to hotshot this title. I think the next champion will have an equally long championship reign. Riffing says, are the Undisputed Era breaking up? It looks likely at the moment. They are definitely teasing some dissension. And I did report before SummerSlam that there are some issues with Undisputed Era coming up from NXT, whereby they are simply not sure whether to bring them up together like they initially wanted to do, because some people want to stay on NXT. Also says, is Braun no longer a SmackDown guy? I've reached out and been told that he is a SmackDown guy, at least for now, but he is just being used on Raw Underground because Raw Underground operates in its own sphere, as it were. Guinness Gamers says, Dane and Maverick should unite as an odd couple. I think there's a lot of potential of comedy there. For me, the whole tag division main roster in NXT needs a new injection of life and not enough teams. Agree completely. I think this is a good way to do that. And I think Drake Maverick, we know they didn't have a plan for him quite recently, back as April, May. So I think this is at least a good way to get him and Dane on TV and to see what goes there. I think there's a lot they could do. Lauren Goodnight says, who do you hope to see fill Jushin Thunder Liger's place in JP Wrestling? Is there a current star you'd like to see poised for that kind of development? It's a good question. When it comes to someone who has that degree of respect, who delivers to that quality, always great matches, and in fact goes out into the world and wrestles everywhere, there are a lot of people who could do it. You look at Kenta, you look at Hiromu. There's a lot of people who could do that for me. But when it comes to the mask, that's a more difficult one. I'm impressed by what I've seen from Desperado, impressed by what I've seen from Bushi. But when it comes to masked superstars at the moment, really it comes down to things like Pentagon Jr. Hard to say. Anan says, do you think AEW will survive in the longer run, just like WWE has been there for decades? Yes, absolutely, I do. AEW has gone from strength to strength, and they are delivering very hard. So I expect they will continue to build over the next few years. And really, their network expected a lot less. So AEW has over-delivered by quite a margin. Pardon me. Naresh says, do you think Asuka finally will have a chance to have 100 days plus championship reign in the main roster? Absolutely, I do. There aren't that many people at the moment who can challenge who aren't already champions or are on SmackDown. Raw is being developed. There's a lot of background storylines with the women, and I think that's great. But I can't see anyone being pushed strong enough to overtake Asuka. So this would be a great time to push her and just have her run through people. It really would, to have like an NXT Women's Championship run, to have her run through people who maybe aren't at the level yet of prominence, but will get it working with Asuka. That's what I want to see. JL says, do you see The Fiend turn into a face? The Fiend has technically already had a face turn, and Wobbly Rollerus is there to essentially reinforce that going forwards. Riffing also says, why is WWE taking all the top stars from NXT? That's why they lose them Wednesday Night Wars. Possibly, yes, but it could be we get an injection of them in a draft upcoming, or it could be that they've always taken the top stars from NXT. That's how the model works. Riffing says, is Kairi Sane no longer in WWE? She is not under contract at this time, but there are plans for her. I did have a video on that on YouTube, so I'm going to try and find that. If you'll bear with me one moment and try and ignore the din that's going on outside with someone starting the car. Once again, I am changing location from here to my back spare room, which will be my office going forwards, so you won't have to worry about ice cream vans or people starting their cars for the foreseeable. Let me just find my video on Kairi Sane. It's here somewhere. There it is. 1.8 thousand views, which is pretty good for a channel which only has 506. Once again, I apologize for the noise, which is not bad for 560 subscribers, but I'll post that in the chat so you guys can have a look at it. But yeah, that is everything I know about Kairi Sane. Guinness Gamer says, tough question. Who would you have take the titles off all the Raw guys and guys? A big question. Right, so just going with Raw. For Drew McIntyre, I would like to see Randy Orton take the championship, probably in Hell in a Cell. I think that's the logical and very intelligent next step. And I think it gives Drew someone to rail against going forward. US title, I would like to see Keith Lee take that from Bobby Lashley, but I'd like to see a long, protracted feud with that one because I think those two can really deliver great matches. Tag titles, I would like to see them wait until Dominic and Ray can actually wrestle as a tag team. I would like to see them take the titles from the Street Profits. When it comes to Asuka, I think Mandy Rose is definitely an option, but Shayna Baszler for me should be the one to take it and go on a long championship run. But once again, I don't want to see her do it yet. Keep that until WrestleMania for me. What else is there? 24/7 championship. I'd like to see that stay on someone for a while. I'd just like to see that stay on someone for a while. When it comes to the tag championships, I would have no issue with the Riot Squad winning the championships from Baszler and Nia Jax. I just don't think they will, unfortunately. Let me know if I've missed any championships. I think I got them all. Guinness Gamer says, do you think it'll be the Fiend that beats Reigns? Yes, I do. But as usual, it's just not a good time for predictions right now. It's genuinely not, because there are so many different possibilities that it could come down to. Now, in this regard, when it comes to the Fiend beating Reigns, it could simply be that what we're going to see going forwards is the Fiend moving to Raw. So it's really hard to say with a draft coming up. But I do believe the Fiend will go until WrestleMania and take it from Roman. But if he's moving to Raw, the match will come at Hell in a Cell. Norech says, do you think there's a chance for Rhea to challenge Asuka for the Raw Women's title at WrestleMania, take it off of Asuka? Absolutely, I do. I think that would be a very compelling storyline as well. Riffing says, are The Rock, Batista, and John Cena returning to WrestleMania 37? At the moment, no. But at the moment, they are more likely to come back than ever. They won't do that until there is no fans. But no fans also means that they can't film. They can't film, and that means that they won't be making the big blockbusters. They will have time to turn up at a WrestleMania. However, as I've mentioned, the WWE don't want to be seen to be going ham, as it were, to be going too far and hiring people because of how many people have just released. Guinness Gamer says, have you went full-time wrestling reporting yet? Yes, I have. That happened early on this month, but I'm not making much money at the moment. Got to be honest. I make at the moment about a third of what I need to make a full-time living. A large part of this is that my YouTube is not at the moment full-time, monetized, I should say. So if you can, please do remember, people, follow me on Twitter, subscribe here, share the video, and watch. At the moment, watch hours are the most beneficial thing. As you can see in my ticker down there, I've got 1,479 out of 4,000 watch hours. And in November, so in 2 months, that starts to roll around and eat up the watch hours I had at the beginning of my journey here, because I started making videos in November. So any watch hours there will be swallowed up. Guinness Gamers asks the same question for SmackDown. Roman Reigns to lose to The Fiend, Bayley to lose to Sasha Banks. I would have liked Mandy Rose to be in that conversation, but Sasha Banks at Hell in a Cell seems most likely now. So yeah, Sasha Banks taking it from Bayley. For the Tag Team Championships, Cesaro and Nakamura have the moment. I would like to see them lose them to a returning Usos or New Day. However, I think Heavy Machinery would be perfect. So right now I want Heavy Machinery to take the titles from Cesaro and Nakamura, and I think that'll be a great feud as well. Intercontinental Championship, I think Sami Zayn is going to confirm himself as the Intercontinental Champion. After that, let's get Big E in that feud for me. I think that's everything. JL says, I think The Fiend will stay on SmackDown. I hope the same. Sorry, I missed one. Anand says, can you make a detailed analysis video on the Fiend gimmick just the way you made about the hacker gimmick? I've been writing that for a while. There is a lot to discuss. I may be making several videos as to the Fiend, so maybe a 2 or 3-parter, but that is in the offing as we speak. And Anon says, Becky Lynch versus Ronda Rousey, WrestleMania 38 or 39 main event. Definitely won't be 37, I'll say that. It's very much up to the women themselves if they want to return, when they want to return, and so on and so forth. But if you tell me that Becky Lynch wants to return, Ronda Rousey wants to return, and they are returning around a WrestleMania, give me the match now, give me the match again and again and again. Just give me the match. I have no more questions coming in. It has been 80 minutes, so I'm going to draw it to a close at this point. We have 12 people still watching. Please do remember to click like on the video. That does help me grow, help people find me, and hopefully will help me make a living, because otherwise I'm going to have to get a day job and these particular streams are going to have to stop. So please do remember to click like. Thank you to everyone who's joined me. Everyone has asked a question. I will see you on Sportskeeda Smack Talk on the Sportskeeda Wrestling YouTube. I'm having words. And the Sportskeeda Wrestling YouTube, you will see me there right after SmackDown. And then after that, you will see me on Saturday, potentially on twitch.tv/backstage team. But I may be going dual stream for those. So it may be right here. Failing that, it'll be Sunday for my usual less news orientated, more laid back one. But as I've said earlier, there will be a lot more content coming your way. There will be more in-depth videos. You'll see more of them. You will get more prediction and preview videos for pay-per-views, not necessarily live streams, but maybe prediction and previews coming up to it, and then results videos and reviews of them. You may see news podcasts, you may see post shows for Raw, and other than that, let me know what else you want, because if there's something you want that I'm not providing, please do let me know. Until then, I have been Tom Colahue, and thank you very much for watching.